Alright guys, we are back with another final project demo. So today we are looking at a project by a student named Nishita Kambhampati, and it's called Smash the Stats, Unleashing Badminton's Finest. So we are going to use some badminton player data, such as the number of points that they've accumulated and the tournaments that they've participated in, to draw some conclusions. So we're going to start by importing our libraries. So we're going to import pandas as PD, which is a common shorthand when you're importing the pandas library. We're going to import seaborn as SNS. We're going to import matplotlib.pyplot as PLT. We're going to import KaggleHub, which is where we are going to get our data set from. And then lastly, we're going to import OS, which is going to give us some operating system functions that we can use to manipulate file paths and things like that, but we will get to that in just a moment. So now getting into our code, we are going to start by downloading the data set from Kaggle. So we are calling this path command, or we are naming this variable path, and we are downloading the data set from Kaggle. It's going to be a data set that has badminton rankings for singles and doubles. And then we're going to print that path out so we can see what it is. So now this for loop is going to basically look through each it's going to look through each file name in the directory specified by the path variable name. It's going to look for any file that ends with .csv, and then it is going to make the full file path to that CSV file based on where it is in the directory and on your computer. And then it's going to break so that it does not keep on searching for more files. And it's a little bit uncommon to see an else statement with a for loop, but in this case it makes sense, because if we do not find a file name that ends with .csv, we're going to raise a file not found error, and it's going to give us a helpful little message that says that there is no CSV file that we have found in the dataset folder. And then we're going to set our data frame variable. We're going to use the pandas read CSV function to basically read our data. All right? So now we're going to set the path variable to this this full path. And here, let me run this stuff. So we can see here that it printed out our path and then found the CSV file, found the women's singles file. So it looks like that may be the one that we'll be using. And then we're gonna set this data frame variable. We're gonna read from the file path up here. So it's going to be this this file path. So then we're gonna look at the head of the data, which is gonna be the first 5 entries. So we can see there's a ranking, player name, the name that's on their jersey, the country they're from, the tournaments they've been in, and the points that they've accumulated. All right. So the question we're going to ask first is, which country has the best performance based on the number of points? Okay. So we are setting this country value to data frame at country. So we're going to be looking at this country category, and this value counts function is going to organize. It's going to organize by country the most points, and we're going to take the first 10. All right. So now we're going to set our figure size. We're going to set it to 12 inches by 6 inches, and we are going to plot. We're going to make a bar plot. The color is going to be dark blue, and we're going to set the edge color to black. And now we are going to set the different titles and labels that we need. So the plot title is going to be aptly best performance based on the number of points. We're going to set it to color dark blue and a size of 24. And then on the x-axis, we're going to put the label country, also color dark blue, size 14. On the y-axis, we'll look at points, same color and size. And then this xticks function is going to set the tick marks on the x-axis. So we're going to set them at a rotation of 45 degrees so that they don't overlap with each other. And then this little snippet right here is going to align the right edge of each label with the tick mark on the graph. So I'm going to show that graph. So we can look at that here. So we're going to see best performance based on number of points. We have our y-axis labeled, our x-axis right here, and then we have the tick marks angled at 45 degrees so that they do not overlap with each other, and then their right side is going to be lined up with that tick mark. So what we can see here is that India kind of by far has the most points. And looking at this analysis, we see one pattern that was observed in the bar graph is the variation in the difference in the amount of points that each country accumulated. That's following a downward path because we have the highest number of points on the left side. So obviously it reveals that India has the highest amount of points. And we can also see from this graph that most countries have around 30 points in total accumulated, some a little bit more, some a little bit less. I think if we looked at more countries in this data set, then we would see it continue to go down. But with this graph, we see around 30 going up to 40 in second place, and then India by far has the most with probably about 125, 130. All right, so now for our next data set, we're going to ask, how does the number of tournaments that a country participates in affect the number of points that they accumulated? So we are setting this tournaments value to the data frame at tournaments, so we can come back up here, look at tournaments. We have an integer value right here, and then we are going to get the value counts of that. And then this points count variable is going to look at the data frame at points, and it's going to group it by country, and then it's going to sum everything together. And we have tournaments count that is also going to do the same thing with tournaments. It's going to basically add up all of the tournaments for each country, right? So here we're going to print out our, looks like our tournaments count. So we're going to see all of the basically the country is by alphabetical order, and we're going to see how many tournaments each country has participated in. And so now we're going to use that data to make our plot. Okay, so we're going to set the figure size to 12 inches by 6 inches. We're going to make a scatter plot this time, and we are going to use the tournaments count variable that we made earlier on the x-axis and the points count on the y-axis. We're going to set the color to magenta, and we're going to set the edge color black, which is going to put a nice black border around our plot. And then we are going to label the x-axis with tournaments, color is magenta, size is 14. Same thing with the y-axis, except the label is going to be points, and then we're going to show that plot. All right, so what does looking at this scatter plot tell us? So we can observe that between 0 and 50 tournaments, there's not that much of a difference in the amount of points accumulated. Right? So you can see between 0 and 50, have between 0 and about halfway through this 0 and 100. This graph reveals the growth in the points earned by countries as the number of tournaments that they were in increased. So the trend in the graph that we can see is a continuous increase in the number of points as the number of tournaments increase, right? So you see here you're in 500 tournaments, and what is it? This looks like, man, 500,000 points, over 500,000 points. So, the general trend is that the more tournaments that you're in, the more points that you'll score. All right, so now for our third question, we are looking at how many tournaments each country won in overtime. All right, so we're going to set our country variable to the data frame at country, and we are going to get the value counts at the first index. So we're going to set our figure size to, again, 12 inches by 6 inches. We're going to look at a box plot this time. On the x-axis, we're going to have tournaments, and we're going to show that plot. So this graph shows us that there are a lot more outliers in the amount of tournaments that countries participated in the box plot. It reveals how some countries participated in many more tournaments than other countries and won more compared to other countries. And a trend that we can see is the variation in the amount of outliers versus the mean, the median, and the mode. So, yeah, this is a well-made project looking at badminton stats, and just from these simple data categories, there's a lot of different stuff that we can look at and figure out.